two technological shifts that I've really noticed, even in the short time that I've sort of been trying to grow, would be it's so much easier to create content than it ever was before. Just like creating new articles of all kinds has gotten just dramatically easier. Also, like all of the SEO nonsense that it takes to actually make something work on a web page that can do it for it.
Hello, I'm excited to have my new guest this week, Jonathan Anderson from Candu,
Hi, thanks for having me.
and Riccardo Montis from Dealshake.
Hey,
Riccardo, nice to have you.
nice to have me as well.
My two guests or co-hosts today are from London, so it's kind of a European atmosphere today. In late July, so who knew that Europeans would work that late in the summer? Jonathan, my first question goes to you so that we can get some background on your company. Tell me a little bit about the origin story of Candu. Like, how did you get the idea, and what path did you select? Because your path is a little bit different from our traditional guests.
Yeah, so I grew up in Silicon Valley. I live in London now, but you can obviously tell my American accent. And I always wanted to start a company. That was always something that I kind of dreamed about doing. But I didn't have a very good idea for it. And then finally, somebody explained to me that instead of thinking about being a seller or like trying to think of what to sell, think about what you would buy as a user. And when I was working at LaunchDarkly, which is a software company that helps engineers build feature toggles, basically to turn on and off features, I was working as a sort of a non-technical, do all kinds of things, and I at the same time was also building my wedding website with Wix. And I remember thinking, oh wow, it is so easy to make stuff in the new world of no code, and yet over here in this enterprise application, I am not able to do anything really without creating a Jira ticket and arguing for prioritization, and or I guess I really like begging for prioritization. And so the original idea was, how do we enable someone like me who has a lot of ideas for how we can improve the product experience, who works in a software company but is not technical, to build experiences that help people use the product. And that we slowly kind of found our way into the world of PLG, which is a really good fit for our business. But ultimately, I guess I should say originally we thought we were creating a new category, which would be this new UX editor. But what we actually found was that we were really part of a category, which is product adoption. How do we help new users kind of onboard into a new product and hopefully find what they're looking for and then eventually upgrade?
I said you followed a path that is different from most of our previous guests in the sense that you raised money, right? You went the Silicon Valley way. Raised money. You raised $8 million overall, right?
Yeah, we didn't do that all at once. We did that in kind of tranches. And I actually started the company here when I was living in London. I think it was very hard to raise the first pre-seed. But because it was really honestly before we really knew kind of what the core idea was. But once we cracked that, we were actually able to raise a pre-seed with Angular Ventures and with Haystack, which is a pre-seed fund in the Valley. And then once we kind of knew what we were doing, and I think I probably raised on Figma Designs, honestly, it was much easier to put together really like our seed round, which is where the bulk of the money came from Two Sigma Ventures and from CRV.
And the reason why you raised a bunch of money. You're doing today, I think, close to $1 million ARR, if I'm correct. But obviously the growth hasn't been as strong as the VC wanted, and so you're following a path that is more akin to kind of that of a bootstrap founder. Right? You're not planning to, I mean, you might raise, but your goal right now is to be more profitable, which is why you also left Silicon Valley to move to London. And
I was already in London, I should say. No, I think, I think there's this, in my mind, there was kind of one path, you have to, once you're on the VC gravy train. You kind of keep going. But it actually took us a while to find product market fit. Like it took us, I wouldn't say we've necessarily like fully cracked it yet. Although now it's much clearer, kind of we have customers who use the product and get value from it. So it's like much easier to kind of see what the patterns are. But I think what we, it took us a while to find our core customer and market. And so I became a lot more cautious over time, going from, okay, we can just, hire a bunch of marketers and sell something between, no, actually, let's kind of prove out what this is actually supposed to do and who's it for. And so I think in that process, we kind of whittled it down to kind of what is the actual core thing that we provide and who do we sell to, and just get a little bit more, I guess, what's the right word? I guess like diligent about kind of our, keeping our expenses in line. And so one thing that we're very excited about is that we're going to have our first we've just tipped over into, what's it called? Being cash flow positive. Yeah, break even. Which is not necessarily like the VC rocket ship that I may have promised some early investors, but it does mean that we get time to build a product that we love with working with customers that we love. And so we really are buying ourselves time to build kind of the next phase of Candu, which is pretty cool.
You have, I think, around 50 plus customers. What kind of customers are using Candu today? What size? I guess obviously software companies, but what size of companies? What's maturity?
Yeah, and I'd say we have sort of 50 in our like growth enterprise plan. We have a bunch of smaller ones, which we can talk more about. But the core of our revenue really comes from, I'd say, these our classic B2B SaaS. They're usually kind of, I'd say, in that like series B to E, I'd say, range. It's pretty common. But then it's grown from there a little bit. So we've got some of our biggest customers include like IBM and Workday use us. And but I'd say the main products that we're best at are ones where you put a credit card in, because that's where it really matters if you can improve the user experience, because you can drive revenue. So if a company cares about its individual user being successful and paying for their product, we tend to be a really good fit. So it's not so much necessarily about how big or what the customer looks like. It's more around who do they sell to, because then we can kind of tie the success of kind of their experiences to what they care about, which is their own revenue.
You have some big competitors like Intercoms or Pendo. So these competitors have a lot of money. How did you differentiate yourself from these competitors, knowing that a lot of them are, have way more resources than you guys?
Yeah, I think we started in the world of building what we call like inline experiences, or kind of changing parts of the product itself. And then eventually we realized that a lot of what people want is maybe something a little bit simpler, like adding a new modal or a product tour. Not necessarily changing the experience, but actually making it more clear how to use what already exists. And that's a little bit of that use case fits us into the product adoption or digital adoption space, of which there are some larger competitors and customers. And what we've kind of said is like, we want to be the absolute best way to build UX. So if you care a lot about the user experience, if you want it to be pixel perfect with the rest of your product and to run, little A/B tests with it, that's kind of our area. And if you care about having like a full, suite that actually does a lot more of like outside of content analytics, or you care about, also interacting with people in like the email client, like we're probably not the best fit, and that's okay. We don't need to be the best. We don't need to be the best like hub. We need to be the best point solution.
What are I would say, maybe before, like, walk us through one core experience that you have had as a founder that defined the company today, either like a fork in the road moment in the life of a company.
Yeah, I think just kind of off the back of what we talked about, I think that I had this idea that the core customer was going to be customer success, because that was one of our first most successful customers. That was like a clear one for me. You can build a customer portal. You can empower this non-technical team to make these really nice experiences in their product. But that was just a misunderstanding of the market. Like fundamentally, unfortunately, customer success doesn't really have the power to get the installation done. So it's like a natural barrier for them. But that's quite different if you are, say, like a product manager, product growth team, or product designer who has a relationship that already works with developers. And so that was kind of a core misunderstanding of our market, I think, that I learned over time. That'd be kind of I think, a good example of a learning that kind of came along the way.
Let's dive into the meat of the podcast, the board session itself. So you mentioned to me that so there are two main challenges that you mentioned, and I think that are very important and broader than you're experiencing. The first one is that in a way you're navigating a troubled landscape in the sense that VCs are much more difficult today because of after the 2021 2022 kind of debacle, I would say. So that's something that we'll talk for another day. The second thing is that your main acquisition channel is SEO, and SEO today is kind of is on shaky grounds because there is now GEO that is coming up. So ChatGPT kind of engine optimization. And then the third piece is what happens to a product like yours that is very centered around interfaces and building these small blocks when you have AI that can append the whole value proposition. So that will be the last part of a discussion. But I really want to talk about the first piece because it's something that affects every indie founders. And this is also one of the reasons why we have Riccardo here. Since Riccardo, and I didn't say that earlier, you manage now like a growth marketing agency. And so you work with both SaaS and marketplaces to help them navigate both paid and kind of organic channels. And so, John, tell us a little bit about what you're doing on SEO, what percentage of your business comes that way, and what have you experienced so far with kind of Geo, so ChatGPT's, Perplexity, Claude, and all these guys.
Oh yeah, so we are the way that we found customers, the way that customers have found us, primarily has been inbound, which is a blessing and a curse, right? It's not as controllable as I would like it to be. I've tried hiring SDRs in the past. I've tried doing SDR work myself. That activity I think can be helpful. We've tried Google Ads. We've tried lots of different flavors of it. But if I really look back at like where do my customers come from, it's they actually found us. And I think a good example is one of our customers, make.com, has built some beautiful experiences with Candu within their product. And I have had, I think, 5 customers who found us from opening up the console, seeing how did Make build this, finding our SDK, and then finding us that way. So there's been a lot of, I guess, that makes things challenging. Yeah, it's a very small version of virality, but that's been a funny way to do it. There's no conference for people in my world. There's like big SaaS, which is more like sales driven. There's other industry specific verticals, but we're kind of this horizontal play. The most successful content that we've created is usually around, let me do a teardown of how a great company builds their onboarding flow, or how they are trying to get people to try their new AI features. And we kind of create these like long teardowns, and we're like, hey, by the way, if you liked any aspect of this, you can now clone it and put it into your product. So a lot of folks kind of come to us from sort of the having read, oh, I love how Airtable did their onboarding wizard. I would like something similar. Great. Oh, there's a company that does that. That's a pretty common like pathway for us. And I think that's worked out pretty well historically. And the world's about to change in a big way. So I think one thing that we're still sorting through is, okay, we're living in this new world where, I certainly using Google a ton less. I'm probably a person who would have bought Candu, maybe at a slightly different scale. How would I find it?
Sorry, I just want to jump in. Question as a marketing side. What is like the specific user personas in those company that decide to buy your product?
Yeah, so this person can have a couple different roles because it does depend kind of how the organization's structured. It could be a PMM, it could be a product designer. Most often it's a product manager or product growth team, but it could also be someone who's doing like product operations or digital customer success. But I'd say the long and short of it is it's a non-technical person who's responsible for moving up activation or conversion. That's their job. They own that metric. And they are trying to figure out how in the world am I going to do this when I don't have a big engineering team backing me up. And that tends to be kind of I'd say our core best person. They're a little bit of how do I say? They've got different roles, but that kind of makes sense because we're a no-code product. So we're transitioning a function that used to live in development into their queue, basically. That's kind of what we enable.
So yeah, it very depends on the type of company, I guess, as you said. Maybe sometimes it's the PM, sometimes the designer. So that is not helping with the marketing.
No, or it's the founder who thinks it's cool. It can be many different people, and also I think now we better understand kind of this is a product growth team that make if that's really well defined. But we did a big survey across our market, just looking at like companies who we think would be a good fit. And if you look across the market, centralized growth teams are fracturing. And they're becoming growth is now getting embedded into all these different functions, even within the product. So it's not consistent. It's not clear whose job this is, because often it's the person who's like, oh, I want to make a difference, and I think the way that we're doing stuff is too slow, and I want to take over a little bit more ownership.
No, it makes sense. As I say, I have experience working with some teams, sometimes like product manager involved, sometimes designer, as you say, founders as well. So it's like a really depends. So, but then the good thing also you isolated like the problem. For example, you box it and say, okay, also your position for me seems you're really heavy helping on the activation. So like the first stage, how the company activate. And then to me it can be also like a great leverage for you how to pitching against other competitors. Because if someone zoom out and see your product and say, oh, they are like other big company that do, maybe they have more feature, maybe they have better support, maybe they have more templates, all these things. So maybe they have, as I said, more functionality coming in the short term, but then you box it a specific problem. So, for example, for me, I will deep down there and say, okay, what are all the different type of shapes and like problem that those teams ask themselves when they working with activation? For example, recently, just before this call, I was in a chat with a product manager for a company that do north of like 40 millions in revenue ARR. And the main problem for them is involved on activation. Exactly. The main problem from them was, okay, also how marketing can be involved in activation without spending a fortune. So then we're starting also to speaking about, okay, great. At the moment, we're experimenting and building a tool for like Reddit AI chatbot. So there is a lot of subreddit conversation happening there. People, especially in tech, asking about specific question. So also thinking about where you can cherry pick those people, and also with AI, as I say, doing a scale and trying to jump in a conversation and adding value. Of course, that is another direction rather than just like content to do so. But as I say, sometimes we had like quite good success. Sometimes if the things working really can like making a difference in the acquisition and activation.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've learned a little bit about is that part of it is creating content, but distribution of content matters a lot more too. And so I think that's like I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do a lot of work there to try to like talk kind of it's almost telling the same story many times, right? Which is kind of actually the process of working on onboarding, for being honest. So if you're working on activation, that is the job. But yeah, I think it's interesting that I do feel like the old rules still apply to an extent, but they are shifting. Like I remember the first time we started getting leads whose who came in through ChatGPT because it recommended us for building empty states. Like that was a very exciting day. I was like, okay, great, we've cracked this very, very specific need that people have, that we got recommended in that way. But it just seems so black box, I should say, at this point. It's just an enigma, like how it all is coming together. Um, yeah, and I think just relying on kind of the old playbook, I do a teardown, I make a template, I share it on LinkedIn. Like I just don't know if that's going to continue to work the same way that it has in the past.
I think, yeah, it's a great point. Also speaking with other company in your position or a little bit bigger, maybe I was just getting a client, they doing like 4 millions ARR is AI tools for improving CV, and they want to double their ARR at the end of the year. So really, really pushing on the growth. One thing also is how to putting together what has been working, for example, also SEO with like geo, as I say, optimizing for ChatGPT, Perplexity, all of them. Because a lot of people sometimes they just jump on the wagon and say, okay, cool, let's move all the budget here. And then, you may be doing massive work, do all the right things you need to do, but then maybe you see between different models, you don't have the same success. A lot of things also changing on like a lot of LLMs. So, and it's not really proportionate, like the input that you put with the output. So for example, my recommendation in those cases can be also having a mix, similar when you invest in stock. You don't want to put all your money for one company. You, as I say, want, depend on the stage of the company and the goal, you want to keep investing on what is been working. For example, for you, as you said, product-led growth, content, but also at the same time starting to shifting part of the budget on those experiments and see how those experimenting working. There is something promising, you're starting getting some early result. Doesn't mean it's working autopilot. It means you're done allocating maybe 10% of your budget, very conservative, on doing those specific content. For example, for ChatGPT is like long tail answer a question. You try to thinking about and also speaking with your user or recording using interview, user discovery, and understanding like the pain point, and then from that, what are all the questions that those people can ask on searching online. And from that, you start in producing content like long tail answer, question and answer for optimizing, as I say, for LLMs. Because if you ask him very, very specific question, they pop out also the citation, the website. So that is one of the part of the optimization. But at the same time, I think is the end goal for both is you need to produce something valuable. They helping the user, as I say, it doesn't matter. It's based on old SEO like keywords, backlinks, or like very, very specific question or optimization on specific citation in your industry. Because normally for like specific product, if you do a lot of research on all the LLMs, normally you have like the same, maybe like 15, 20 sources that pop up all the time for a lot of question in the industry. Maybe it's coming from like publisher, maybe it's coming also like from specific company. I was just researching the other day also Canva, they're doing quite well to optimizing for geo. Another thing also for them, they have a huge online footprint, so it's not something that is easy also to replicate from day one from other company. Sometimes you can play some hack, sometimes work, sometimes not, but I think it's more like the mentality to having a budget for test, keep playing those tests, and then see if you find something is working, starting to shift more the focus rather than, as I said, jumping around with your budget and say from one quarter to another, okay, we shift everything here.
Two technological shifts that I've really noticed, even in the short time that I've sort of been trying to grow Candu, would be one, it's so much easier to create content than it ever was before. Just like creating new articles of all kinds has gotten just dramatically easier. But also like all of the SEO nonsense that it takes to actually make something work on a web page, like that can do it for it. It does make me think, though, that if that is true for me, it's got to be true for everyone else, right? So if we're all getting equally good at working on, improving our SEO pages, like therefore, does it really make that big of a difference? So that's been one thing. I think the other thing that maybe it's a little bit like sneakier, I don't know if the right word is, but we use our B2B for on our website for the US section to identify kind of who's looked at the content. And again, I don't know if it's necessarily helped us like land a specific lead per se, but it does really help you figure out like what are the types of things that appeal to this audience that I'm going after. So I think that's been really just a really interesting experience, I guess. I'm trying to figure out like what is the right, where is the interesting story, that I can create for folks.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. But I think a lot of people nowadays, they're just also producing a lot of low quality content with AI.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
like really like a massive of copy of the copy of the copy of someone else's article
I
that
know it's so derivative. It's so bad. Yeah.
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 I think sometimes if the people stop and think, okay, does this piece of content really help or not? I'm not saying you need to spend 10, 20 hours of every single article you do, but then because also maybe you can try to see if you can rank for like specific, as I say, query or long tail keywords, but then also thinking about, yeah, like, does this valuable to the people coming across it? Yes or not? So, because I think also moving forward with Google, if it's not valuable, you're not going to rank anymore. Maybe you're ranking now, but what about in the next 6 months? Or does the AI going to get that as a source for suggesting to the user? Yes or not?
Yeah. I guess my feeling is like now, let's say like I'm using like O3, it like reveals to me how to actually make a why an article is or is not successful, with Google. It's just like it's like kind of like the what's it called? It's almost like the veil is being lifted on like all of the SEO work that's being done. And I'm like, okay, now I can finally see how this thing is working. And it's a machine, it's not magic anymore, right? Which is very interesting. I'm like, okay, great. Now I understand how this specific thing now works. But therefore, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Can anyone do it? So I think that's been interesting. Like, as I've become kind of not, I wouldn't say a master of AI tools, but as I've like really gotten into the Kool-Aid of using it all the time on everything, I've learned a ton more about SEO in a way that I really, which has been really interesting. And I should say like one of our customers is Moz. They do an amazing job at this. And I like would really rate their work being done. So I've had some learnings in the past, but I do feel like the veil is really being lifted for someone like me.
No, it makes sense. Makes sense. I think, yeah, the bar, they just like lower the bar to everyone to starting to produce more articles and pumping more content out of there. But then another thing, thinking, going back to like your audience, thinking about, for example, Squad, they're working on activation. What are the most important things for them? It's like getting educated about like different example of like onboarding flow, different tactics. So the main thing would be also like try to boil down to, okay, what those people try to look for.
Yeah, and I think that's why our like teardown content has done pretty well. Because it's kind of like here is how we think. Here's how Canva's getting people to onboard to their new like AI features. So it's kind of like brand someone recognize that you like or have used, and then somebody trying to unpack like what are the decisions that the product growth team is making to kind of create that for them, and therefore like what can you extract from it. I think that's why that content has worked relatively well for us. Um, and I should say, like, I don't know necessarily if we've like, I don't want to claim it by any stretch that we like really like nailed the whole puzzle, but I think that's one area that I think has done really well for us. I think one of our most successful articles was I wrote about Airtable's Wizard and how they built that out. And recently maybe this is a segue to the next part of the conversation, but they threw it out and they basically replaced it with an agentic editor. One of our best funnels was somebody reading that Airtable article saying, "Oh, I want that wizard," and "Oh, by the way, Candu can makes that for you now. You can use it." So, what does it mean? Therefore, this is maybe a little existential when our best activation pathway and also our best content has now thrown the baby out with the bathwater and restarted themselves as a whole new thing, which, by the way, we don't sell yet, which is sort of an interesting, I guess, meta conversation on this whole conversation. So.
Makes sense. Another thing is also there is no like our ultimate marketing strategy. Like depends on company goals. But another thing I will ask normally to like my clients is like, what are the goals for the company, for example, for the next 6 months, few years, because that can really change the different things that you can play. For example, I have a client, it's been a year, they try to sell the business, so they say, okay, we are not investing in SEO at this stage, we're like doing other things, and then they're really looking for like a specific CAC, specific LTV, all these things just to keeping the business in a good shape, sexy shape for being sold. So what are your goal for the next 6 months and the next 3 year?
It's funny. I think the answer has changed so much, even in the. I mean, the short answer is like you want to grow, right? You want to make something that people want to buy, right? Like that is the core of it. But my answer has actually changed a lot based on I think being on kind of the going from being kind of VC led to being okay. We need to cover our costs with money that we're bringing in, and having a sustainable business, and that's really changed my perspective on what's important or what to spend money on. Yes, I think the bar has gotten so much higher in my brain now for like what this dollar needs to do because it needs to convert into something. It can't just be um, we're not throwing stuff at the wall anymore. I mean, we're still throwing stuff at the wall, but it's not in the same way, right? Um,
On the budget, yeah.
yeah, it's got to be yeah, it's got to convert into something. Um, that said, I guess we are I guess launching on Tuesday. I don't know when this podcast will come out, but this week we're launching to our customer base a new version of Candu, which is fully agentic, where you can have a conversation with our editor and have it create some really amazing content. It's one of the first like interoperable like drag and drop and prompt experiences, so that's like pretty fun. And we have a lot of work to do to kind of prep for the like GA launch, which is going to be in September. But for me right now, it's how to build a little bit of hype around this new thing that we're building, and then how to actually make this next version of Candu, which is Candu.ai, really successful. And that's a little bit of a shift, I'd say, even from last year when that wasn't possible, when it was more like, okay, great, we know what we're selling, we know what this does, get it out there. Now it's like, okay, hold on, we're going to redo kind of how our product fundamentally works, and how people interact with it, and then try to get that out into the market. So I think that's I guess my goals have shifted a little bit. I want people to try it, not necessarily just to buy it.
Fair. You want to get like feedback, understand all this part of the discovery and fine tuning the product.
Yeah, and I think one thing I learned, I guess, in this process of starting a company is like if someone is not going to pay for it ultimately, it's not a good use of your time you don't build for them, right? Don't spend your time on them. Don't support them. And I was laughing about the 50 customers because previously actually we had many, many, many more customers at a much smaller scale, but we couldn't support them in the way that we needed to, kind of given what our product takes to, what it takes to be successful. And what we found actually is that there's a different the version of Candu that's most successful that really helps product growth teams sprint forward takes some support, and it takes some we have to do a good job with that. And so our ACV changed really dramatically. It really changed our motion from being self-service to sales-led. Like it was a whole different motion to learn. And so I think that was also a kind of a big shift going back to kind of what we learned, and who our customers are. But I would like more of the people who I would normally just spend a lot of time selling to try it and see how far they get without me. Because I think that's kind of the next flavor of Candu, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, makes sense. Another thing also, like when you're speaking about like onboarding tear down, another thing I was thinking about is like, do you have a templates? What do you offer like to the people, like to try to get to the wow moment, the early value without speaking with the sales, without getting demo, without investing a lot of time.
This is my favorite part about, I think, working on a product is when you finally like understand like what makes someone's eyes light up. For us, there's a couple of moments that I think are really like nice for folks. One of them is when somebody publishes a component into their product and see it show up on the page, because that's just exciting. Like that's a. I mean, the problem with that though is it's pretty far down the funnel. You got to be installed. It's a whole you have to be kind of in onboarding, right? That's not going to happen on a sales call. Um, Another magical moment that happens is when we recreate something that they coded. You're like, hey, you made this dashboard. By the way, this is the no code version of it. I spent 20 minutes on this. Usually it's actually a couple of hours, but here's what it is. You probably spent 2 months on this, and I did this in a very short amount of time. And now I can inject it into the page with our Chrome extension. And you can see what it's like and actually play around with it. And that's also kind of a very cool thing to kind of see. Both of those, however, require effort, right? Either they require the install to happen or they require me to create some content. In the new world, which we're still working toward, you can, I don't know, go to someone's website or go into their product. Let's say you go into like Loom, you can take a screenshot of their homepage, and then we can create that as a piece of content, which you can then inject, which is kind of crazy. Like that is where we're going to, right? We're going to completely commodify UI. It will not make any sense for anyone to code a button anymore. Like that is just what LLMs are going to do for us, and we want to help enable that process to be much faster. And I think the magical moment is going to move up the funnel for that reason, and also because if you've tried using Lovable or Bolt, one of these tools, like you can already see it. Like it's magical. You're making some cool stuff.
Yeah, I use Cursor. It's like
Yeah,
for like
it's
small experiment like grow hacking. It's like
it's so cool. It's so cool. And so I think that there's a new opportunity now for us to move up that magical moment without necessarily having the sales conversation with maybe just like a chat box. But I think we need to one, improve our agentic editor, and then also two, figure out how to present that the right way.
And and so maybe it's a good segue into our second topic, which is around the impact of AI and how does it shift everything. The one thing I can say in regards to the transition of SEO from SEO to GEO is that, firstly, I agree with Riccardo that SEO helps GEO. Like if you're strong in SEO, you'll be strong in GEO. My question sometimes is more around long tail keywords. Like, are people going to ask the same questions on SEO than they did with ChatGPT that they did ask with SEO, which is not always. I mean, I'm not sure. So many people that were scoring high on long tail SEO, will that traffic translate to the new world? But and it's also true that you mentioned, Riccardo, at the beginning, Reddit is over indexed by ChatGPT and others right now, and so there's kind of a war. If you want to have a side hustle, John, maybe you open a Reddit kind of agency. I can tell you that there's a lot of demand for that. And Riccardo's smile speaks for itself. So
yeah, as I say, like especially with Reddit, I think nowadays can be like a little bit a shortcut in some case for geo. Not all the case, to be honest. But the main thing is like, as I said, depend on the industry and the citation. But sometimes Reddit is very high rank in specific citation. Another thing we're starting to see with like client we implementing like Reddit, our Reddit chatbot, is also like you can use Reddit to like crawling specific like subreddit and spot hot topic that then you want to transform in articles or repurpose in different type of content. And also because like Google in many cases doesn't get a lot of those content, can be easier to get rank as well. So all these little things in the end can help as well. And Reddit indeed, as Pascal said, nowadays is becoming so hot, especially in the last few years. Also like the money, the marketing ads that have been spent on Reddit a while. It's like growing. So yeah, as I say, in a nutshell, I think Reddit is like where to keep an eye if you want also to find any small shortcuts on your geo.
So now I wanted to talk about your second challenge, which is a challenge that many companies are facing right now, which is around AI and the threats that the threats and opportunities that it poses to traditional software. So you mentioned earlier, what you mentioned earlier reminds me of some of my thought process right now, but maybe what would be your concern? Like when you have nightmare about Candu, John, and about AI, what are you the most afraid of? And maybe we can start there, and then we can talk about what you suggested just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, this is such an interesting. Well, I think this is such an interesting time to work in software. I like truly, could there be a more interesting time to be working in tech? I mean, it's just like things are changing so fast. I remember we launched a way to basically help people create assets in the product using Dolly, even in November. Awful, unusable. You could not use it to create anything that was useful, and it couldn't edit anything because it's. And now it's not perfect, but it's just like it's usable now. Like that wasn't true before, and so it's really hard to plan product for where it will be 6 months from now because it's really hard to think about. It's like moving so fast. But it also means you get to hit yourself to a faster train, which is really cool. And I think it creates an opportunity for new players because the fundamental rules are changing. In my market specifically, we are trying to be the best UX editor that someone can buy, right? The absolute best for building components you can launch into your product. Fundamentally, that's content. Let's be honest, AI is going to make all the content in the world pretty fast, pretty soon. And so for me, like there's just no world in which we couldn't be a part of this. And it still is. There's so much uncertainty because with a small engineering team and with a lot of great products we've already built, how do you reallocate people to work on this new area? I feel much better now about kind of where we are in terms of our product development because the LLMs now there's a structured way to interact with our editor, right? That's very helpful. That was a big shift that I think Claude really pushed forward, even in the last quarter. And then there's going to be a new challenge, but maybe we can talk about what happens after the first bit.
Yeah, my take is that you're right that we don't know what the future of software and who is going to use software. Maybe software will it be for human? Will it be for agents? Will it be for both? Maybe the humans will still use software, but the fastest growth will be on things that are specifically optimized for agents. That we don't know. There is a lot of question there. I think that the other question is who will actually do the job, meaning that if teams are going to downsize to take advantage of AI, they will be like, who will actually do the job of going to Candu, clicking on I want this and that, sticking it to the product, etc., etc. So I think, to me, the opportunity, the way I see it, is on revisiting the possibility for a world with less humans in the loop. So in your case, it could be, okay, what is my goal? Then based on your goals and maybe a picture of, or like a loom, as you mentioned earlier, or a picture of your dashboard or whatever, it defines a strategy, even content for your strategy. So in a way, I have an input, which is an image or a loom. I have an output, which is an ensemble of tactics. And then I can click deploy and I just post my GitHub or whatever. And then, cursor writes the code that you can insert. It doesn't obviously push to production, but at least you can see how it would look like in your product. I'm not saying that everything that I say is possible today, but will it be possible in the next year or two? It's not unlikely. And if it is the case, then you're not something for a PM. You're completely shifting the needs of a team around improvements, because that to me is a bigger unlock, is to widen the scope a little bit to make place for a world with less human involvement, like basically smaller teams. I believe it will be smaller teams.
I think this is, I mean, when I think about kind of our best customers are growth squads, right? You have a product designer who cares about pixels. You have a product manager who's thinking about what are some great experiments I can run. You have maybe somebody in analytics who's kind of looking at, how does this A/B test compare to another? You have an engineer who actually installs the snippet, and you probably have, I don't know, someone in product marketing who's thinking about, hey, we have a new upcoming feature launch. I'm going to make a great video, or I'm going to create a great GIF for this. AI is going to be able to do a lot of those jobs. Like that's going to really, I think that's really going to collapse into a smaller person being more successful. I think the existential question for a tool like ours is, are they still going to make UI? Right? Are we going to, as the mode of how we interact with applications going to also change? So is it enough? Is it going to be enough to enable one person to do the job really well? Or is the job itself going to change?
I think it's going to be both, personally, from both directions. So the people is going to shrink, team is going to shrink, people is going to choose more work in different direction. But also at the same time, the way to do the job is going to change. Similar to SEO and AI now. Yeah, the agency, they still doing 10 articles for like $3,000 a month. Are they going to survive the next few years? Not sure. So, or maybe massively reduce the client, or maybe just going up market for very, very specific things. So I'm feeling like the change is going to be both direction, size of the team and also the type of job. And it's what I see also in marketing that is happening at the moment, how you're using and what is the workflow is changing at the moment. You need to connect much more things faster to also compete rather than before. Just say, okay, SEO, I need to do these things. I'm going to produce like this amount of articles. I'm going to do my backlinks, my outreach. Great. I know at the end of the quarter, I'm going to be at this point. I remember back in the day, I was working as a marketing lead for a B2B SaaS, and I had 7 writers part-time to do SEO, to do all the articles. I was doing keyword research, all the brief, and then we have this peer review, and then we were posting, and I was like, okay, now it's like, yeah, it's not needed. Maybe one person review everything. It's more than enough when you have a good research. So, interesting future ahead.
Yeah, but and I think that I would say this. My hunch and the way I see things is that the human part will always be there, but it will not be where the growth is. Again, if you think about, for me, one of the most interesting graph is the graph of the market share of Microsoft. If you think about Microsoft, I mean, as a percentage of compute today, most compute is not done on Microsoft computers because it's done through iPhones or Android phones. But if you think about, it doesn't mean that Microsoft is not important, both as a company, but even their OS. I mean, most people in front of a desktop today, or even a laptop, are in front of a Microsoft phone computer. It's just that the majority of people in front of that have a computer, they don't have a desktop or a laptop, they have a phone. And so in many ways, it's true that it's better. In many ways, it was better to build phone apps for phones than for computers in the last 5-10 years because there was more growth. But it doesn't mean that Office is not valuable because at the end of the day, you still have these people. So I think that there will still be people, but yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, good point. As I say, quite a nice chat here, guys. Any last thoughts?
I typically ask 2 questions at the end of my podcast. The first one, and you're from Italy, right? If I remember?
Yes, I'm Italian.
Okay, so the mama, la mama is important for you. My question is always the same. What is the most important thing you've learned from your mother?
Fair. So I need to say also my dad was important, but my mom used to be like a teacher and my dad an entrepreneur. So I think I both learn two things for them. As I say, for my mom, yeah, like learning things, very, very important. How you learn. And for my dad, how you put things in the real world, how you test it quickly and move things forward. So as I say, is the reason why also running my business and helping other business to grow. It's just to put the two things together. Discovery, learning, and yeah, ship things fast.
And my second question, which will take some of a discussion we've had earlier around AI. What is the most contrarian take you have about AI in the coming years? It could be anything slightly touching AI.
It's very depends. For example, one thing is, and also like teach at the university some class on like marketing, how to running ads, analytic for marketings. And what I see is like sometimes students they just using a lot of AI in the work. I'm not saying I'm using every day, but I'm saying is like the capability to like develop critical thinking or having like a base knowledge that you can use and understanding something is like AI hallucinating or like say something that is not true. For the new generation, it is not going to be there as maybe we had because we went through the hard work in a way. I don't know. I feel like I'm speaking like my grandfather. You know, those generation, the new generation, are not going to. They never done the work, but with AI, I feel like less and less notion than be learned, so it's much easier to get things for like, as I say, for like real or like through, because you don't have the basis to compare something, or you don't have the knowledge in a specific field, for example, like marketing or technical field. As I say, especially now as a coder, okay, apply change, yes, 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 and then your code is breaking up and say, damn, please AI fix this. So I feel it's like it's going to be much more speed, but then having a core knowledge, I think is going to be valuable, not to be run by a tangent.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I see your point. It's true that either AI is going to do it and it's going to learn by mistake and it's going to iterate on its own, or you have to develop some intuition and some taste. But if you're only relying on AI, you're going at human speed, but you're not. But you're neither learning nor experimenting fast enough, and that you're going to be in a bad shape. Thank you. I see the teacher
Yeah,
in you.
yeah.
Go
Thank you
ahead.
for having me. And I have the last question for you.
Yeah, go
So,
ahead.
what do you think is going to be the future of like SaaS? So, the next generation SaaS, how they're going to look like?
It's a very good question. I actually don't think that we have seen that yet. I'm not sure we have. I would say I've been looking at different products for a while, and the most impressive things I've seen so far is around AI agents and basically things that are fully autonomous and multi steps. Um, Meaning that I feel that what is going to be produced by AI will feel much more like a factory and much less like traditional software. And so the way you have to think about it, like basically industrial engineering will have a renaissance. Because you thinking with agents is very different. You have to think about workflow and business processes in a very templatized fashion. Whereas if you think about the traditional UX paradigm, it it leaves always the interpretation to the human. But if you're going to build software for agents and with agents, you in a way you have to reduce the degree of variability at each step, and so and that's how you will get through hallucinations and issues. And so in a way you'll have to think more like Six Sigma in how you code, which is going to be around your prompt, about the data set that you're giving it, how you plug each step, and how each step's output is used by the next step's input as an input. Again, I was lucky enough to see a factory that was unfortunately slaughtering pigs to transform them into bacon when I was at my first internship, and you see that every step of the way, from the pig entering to a ham in supermarket boxes exiting, every step is optimized to multiple percentages, way more than what we're doing today with UI or UX, which is very human centric. I mean, we're doing some data analysis, we're improving it, we're using Candu to shift our early mistakes. But at the end of the day, this is a very human way, and it's because the customer is a human, and the human can adapt and can even settle with shitty UX or UI, as we've seen in many companies using old school software from the 90s still today and being happy with it. Whereas the agents are going to be much more, I think they will have to be much more automated. Everything will have to be much more templatized. And so you'll have to think with an industrial engineering mindset. And I don't think we have seen that yet at scale in the open world. I mean, we've seen some examples of it, but very few have seen that. And so that's my view of SaaS. But
Interesting. As I say, for me as a marketer, I think acquisition is going to play a bigger and bigger role. Yes, yeah, when the software becoming like more replicable, easy to produce, yeah, I think acquisition as well.
I would say that yes, but not only the growth piece, but also the brand piece.
Yes.
And so I feel that we might enter a world where software would be like more like CPG, where you're buying a Notion, and you can see that in the fact that some software companies are like Notion, they're building not just one piece of software, they are building like a suite that is growing and growing, because one, they can, it's faster for them to build, and second of all, because they want you to stay in the Notion ecosystem or the Figma ecosystem.
But also for them is like they already have the user, so it's easier to like upsell, respect other competitors that they need to get the user from zero. So it's where also like getting the audience user is like much more important as well. I feel both sides, as I say, acquisition and also the value of the software need to be there, of course, for keeping the user in the loop. But yeah, I agree with you. I think companies going to become bigger and bigger and expand in different vertical, different sub products.
Yeah, they will be kind of centers of influence, and you can see that in anything. I mean, right now it's like a winner takes all. I mean, Mr. Beast, he started with a show, now he's doing Feastables and other things. I mean, you expand your footprint. You build a distribution, either because because you have a distribution channel, and you expand your footprint, and you bundle everything so that people are fed as much as they can and they stay with you. I mean,
yeah, I think it's the audience. They have a huge audience,
Yeah.
especially when they're starting like translating another language. Yeah, so they, even if they have like 0.001 conversion for anything, they can sell whatever they want. So
Thanks, Riccardo. Thank you very much for
thank
everything.
you for having me.
And
Chat.
yeah, goodbye.